Hey, what's up, guys? We're a Bishop of the Press A to Listen podcast here, and we're in the thick of it for video game season. So here's another video review. Of course, this is not for a AAA, ultra budget type game. It is for a downloadable game called Pure Pool. It's been out on the PS4 and some other platforms, I think, for a little while here, but it's finally out on the Xbox One this week. And I want to do a little quick review and show some gameplay off of it and stuff like that. So just get into it. This is obviously, you're kind of a standard pool billiards game. You have the standard, 8-ball, 9-ball, but they kind of mixed up a little bit with the way they do challenges and multiplayer and stuff like that. So, like I said, you can go in there, you can play a regular game of 9-ball, a regular game of 8-ball if you want to, against either the computer. You can play against your player DNA, which essentially means if you ever played the Forza games on Xbox One, Forza 5 and Forza Horizon 2, they have a thing in there called Drivatars, which basically it takes whatever your friends have done in the game, combines it all, crunches it down into the cloud, and then you can basically race against their DNA in those games. That's kind of what this is as well. It's called Player DNA. It's not called Poolatar or any kind of weird name like that. You go in there, you can download your friends, you can download some random people on the leaderboard if you want to. When you download their DNA, you can then go against them. So instead of going against the typical AI that might be either too easy or too difficult, you can kind of play against your friends without them being online. And that's a really cool feature to a game that, you sit there and you say, oh, it's a pool game. What else can they do to it? Throwing that in there and adding that little mixture to it, I think, is really well done and actually ends up making the game a little bit more fun offline. So obviously, like I said, that's cool, but they also have stuff that I mentioned briefly earlier called challenges. And what you do with this is it's kind of mixes it up and throws a little wrench into your regular kind of pool play. So they have something called Speed Pot, which is, you basically, however many balls can you put in the fastest possible time. They have stuff like Checkpoint, which is put as many balls in as possible before time runs out. And they use the word pot a lot because, like, pot as many balls. And yeah, that might be something used overseas, but over here in the United States, that's not a commonly used term. They have stuff like Royal Rumble, which is clear the table as quickly as possible. After a certain amount of time, new balls will be added to the table, so you want to kind of get those in as fast as you can. So again, that's another kind of twist they put on the classic kind of billiards and pool games. And I guess I should talk about the actual gameplay. The gameplay itself, you use the right stick to shoot. Obviously, the further you pull back on the right stick, the more power you get. So you can kind of inch it back if you want to do a little bit of a slow shot to where you don't hit the cue ball in and stuff like that. But the way they do it is, you'll see it here. The white line is obviously where the cue ball is going to go on your shot, and the yellow line is where the ball you're going to hit goes. So they do a good job of telling you where stuff's going to happen, when it's going to happen, so you're not just it's not a big guessing game or anything like that. Now, as I mentioned, you can do these type of challenges and game modes against the player DNA from your friends, against the AI, but they also have a career mode, which it's not really a career mode as much as it is just a bunch of games thrown into a tournament, and then you just move on to the next one. But you play 9-ball, or if you have an 8-ball and a 9-ball tournament, you play 9-ball, then you move on, you do one of those challenges that I mentioned earlier, and then you move on and you win it, you move on to the next tournament. So it's not so as much as a career as it is just a bunch of events tied into a tournament. So it's more of a tournament style thing than a career. It's something that's there. I don't think you necessarily need to do it. I think it's one of those games where you can kind of play just a straight game of 8-ball, game of 9-ball against a friend, and you can kind of move on to the next game and do stuff like that. So it's not needed. It's cool that it's there, but I found it to be a little bit more aggravating than enjoyable when compared to just the single games you can do off the main menu. Another thing they have is they do have online multiplayer, so if you're the type of person who doesn't want to just play against ghost players or the AI, you can go online and play people. They have rankings, they have leaderboards for that stuff. The online's a little bit weird. It's a little bit delayed, so somebody will shoot, and about maybe 10 seconds later is when you'll actually see their shot. So it's a little bit of I wouldn't say lag, it's just the way they have it designed is a little weird, but it works perfectly fine. You can do that against friends, you can do that against random people, obviously. So that's there. I've found the online play to be rather smooth and rather enjoyable compared to, like I said, the career mode, which is not as fun as it probably should be. Kind of the last thing we'll talk about here is they have stuff you can unlock. You have levels. So basically every time you kind of play some games, you get points, you get accolades. So you get accolades for hitting 3 balls in a row, hitting only balls into the corner pockets during a game. And with those accolades, you get points that level you up. And with these level ups, you can unlock different cues. You can unlock different colors for the table, different table skins, and stuff like that. And there's different skill levels, obviously. There's amateur, there's pro, and then there's master. The downside to these difficulty levels is they go from being amateur, which at times can be real easy to go against, and then there are times when amateur difficulty they make some shots that are just really absurd. And then when you step it up to pro difficulty, which if you play the career mode, you'll find out they throw those into the amateur tournaments. The pro difficulty, it's almost like it's too big of a step up. You go from playing amateur to pro, and it's like it's such a huge step up from the last difficulty. It's almost impossible to win most of your games. And granted, you want a little challenge with this. You don't want to just run through everybody that you play against, but it's almost too difficult to play on that. And playing on master, you have got to be on your A game. You have to be able to hit shots in. You have to be able to know your angles, your timing, because if you don't do that, they'll clean the table without you getting more than one shot. So the AI is a little bit of a pain, but it's not something that, like I said, you can go against they kind of combat that with going against your friends with their downloading their player DNA. So they kind of, if you don't want to go against that, if it is too difficult for you, you can download player DNA and you can do it that way. Try to get through everything that this game has to offer. I've tried to do it pretty fast, so my apologies if I did go too fast for you. This game, it doesn't seem like it has a lot of stuff, but I think the player DNA is really well done. I really like the way that they implemented that. The AI is kind of a pain, and the multiplayer I think actually runs pretty smooth. Hopefully people will actually be on to play it once the game is available. And I like the way they do the 8-ball and 9-ball, and the rules are pretty much, if you've played any of those games in the past in real life, those rules carry over to this virtual game. The game looks beautiful. It's one of the best looking, it's something like when you have nothing but pool balls, you have nothing but a table to render. You can focus on those elements of the game, but it really does. It looks phenomenal, and it's one of the best looking games that I've played in recent memory. And I know that might sound absurd to certain people because it's a billiards or pool game, but it really is good looking. I really enjoy the gameplay. I think for $10, I think it's really worth your time. If there's something like you're bored one weekend, or when we get to December and January, there's not a ton of games out anymore. If you want to pick this up, I think it's totally worth it. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.